What is going on, family and friends? Thank you for tuning into another edition of Casual Highlights podcast platform. The goal of this show is to always educate, inform, and inspire while having casual conversations in sports in the world around us. And yes, this segment is the Hygh Depth Discussion. And I got a gentleman that I met about several years, I want to say pre-pandemic or during the pandemic. Andre Powell goes by the name of Amp. And this brother has just great knowledge and information that he shares on his platforms. He's a motivational speaker. He's a father. He's not mistaken, a pastor as well, business owner. Man, he does it, man. And we just gonna sit down, and prior to the show, we was talking about, about the high depth discussions and dig deep about the timing of it. So we just gonna talk, man, and just get into it, because I'm just want to pick his brain, and I got a lot of questions. So without further ado, Mr. Andre Powell, what's going on, sir?
What's going on, brother? How you feel?
I'm doing good, bro. Doing good. I can't complain out here.
Good. I'm excited to be on the show, man. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, bro, you bet. Man, I like to get started, do something a little different today. We got some icebreaker questions for you, man.
All right.
So which weird fashion trend would you want to bring back today in 2023?
Let's see. So I think for me, one of the trends is, you may remember in the 90s, the denim, the denim overalls. I used to wear my overalls, the one off, and rocking the shirt. So everybody like, what? Oh, he got a nice little rip ups, the wear and tear of them.
Okay.
Yeah, either that one or the LL Cool J leg.
I know about the LL Cool J leg. Yeah, the one, was it the left one or the right one? I tried to do my own, but
right. No, so there's a story behind that. So for me, I was a huge LL Cool J fan, but I didn't really dress or do the leg thing until college, like my freshman year of college. I was in there summer before college starts program, and my mom came to visit with the family, and I was just walking, of course, with my little swag going on, and my pant leg rolled up, and just chilling. She's like, Andre, from across the quad. I was like, oh, if you don't put that leg down.
Mama called you out, huh?
Right.
Mama.
It's a standard.
You can't be doing that, boy. I see you. I love you. You can't be doing that. Huh?
Like, don't embarrass me.
Did your mom work at the school at your college that you went to?
So no, I actually had the opportunity to go to the college that she works at. And so it was between the one that she works at or Virginia Tech. And I chose Virginia Tech. Not really because my mom worked there. It was more so of a spiritual thing that I was kind of running from. I was called to ministry in my senior year. And for me, it was one of those things, being a 17-year-old and the challenge of being instructed to teach others, especially people that were older than me. I'm like, I haven't done anything in life. What can I possibly give to you all? And so for me, I went the furthest route away to where nobody was checking up on me. If I needed something, they could be there, and vice versa. But for me, it was a spiritual running experience. And so I did that for a good little while until the Lord said, yank, pull me back.
Yeah, you had a Jonah moment.
Yeah.
You had a Jonah. So let me ask you this. I know this is off script, and one of the things was talking about the purpose and the speaking, but you was talking about the calling, because I believe everybody's calling is different. Mm-hmm. Everybody's called to a different position, and some people run for years. So my question is, like, why do you feel like we as believers or whatever faith run from that particular calling, like especially people who are called to like speak in front of people? Mm-hmm. Like, why do you feel like that's a major issue with people in general?
So most often is we feel inadequate. I mean, we are looking at what we possess, even in those moments. And I know from running it myself that I didn't feel like I had anything to offer anybody. I didn't feel like I could, in my own power, in my own strength, bring a word that was worthy of people listening to, standing behind. Or I also didn't feel like I had lived enough life to tell a 30 something, tell a 40 something, tell a elder or a minister something that might encourage them to keep on moving. And so that is one of the biggest struggles that I think we all have in that called. For those that are called, right? There are a lot of people that are called, but few are truly chosen out of that calling. And for those that are chosen out of that calling, some of them have that Jonah experience or that prodigal son experience, if you will, where they're like, no, give me all that I have right now, and I'm gonna go run out and do what I need to do. But then they come back to their senses of God has called you to something greater than where you are right now. And so I think for me, my running was a little bit of Jonah and a little bit of prodigal. I'm like, hey, y'all gave me all the learning I needed right here. Let me go experience this out here and see what is out there so that I can bring something back. But I came to my senses. It was forcibly, but I came to my senses.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. So like, did your parents help you along the way, like kind of give you a sense? Because I really believe like parents kind of, when you have a child and you do it like the way it's supposed to be done, or even if you mess up or things happen where you might not stay with that particular person, or you know you was out there, you was live, things happen.
Right.
But do you think that parents still should like be able to pick up on things with their child and be able to help guide that child in a certain direction?
Oh yeah. So that's the beauty of parenting, right? A parent that is in tune with their kids and has raised their kids and reared their kids, they are very much so their salvation until they can make the decision themselves. But even after they leave the house, there is a bond, a spiritual bond, I believe, that keeps them in tune. And it's the Holy Spirit. Let's be completely honest. It is the Holy Spirit for those parents that believe that when you are in need or of an encouraging word, or just to be reminded that God loves you, that parent always seems to pop up in the picture. And I will give an example. I was going through a rough time in school. I had lost one of the students on my hall, and another one attempted suicide in the actual hall that we were in. And for me, I was going through a rough time of why am I here? Like, why am I here? And the most random thing, I didn't usually check my mail that often. And this one day I just so happened to go and check my mailbox. There was a card from my mom. And she just recounted. She's like, you are a blessing. I appreciate the man that you're going to grow into. And don't ever forget that I love you, but God loves you even more. And for me, even in that moment, it was just like, wow, like, okay, like even in my mess ups and my sins and my craziness of that life that I was living, that parental reminder that, hey, you are not forgotten, was one of those things that saved my life on a number of occasions. Even when bad decisions were about to be happening, mom would say, hey, I hadn't talked to you in a little while. I just wanted to check on you. Like, we're not going to do that tonight. Because mom would ask, so what are you getting into tonight? Oh, I was just going to hang out with some friends. Did you finish your homework? Like, mom, I'm not even in your house. Did you finish your homework? Did you get your projects done? So, but it wasn't like she was checking on my homework or hounding me about getting work done. She allowed me to live and make my own mistakes. But when this Holy Spirit impressed on her to reach out or send a card or send a letter or, contact me in some way, shape, or form, it was always a blessing when I least expected it. And sometimes it was that right on time, I needed that. And I think that is something that parents have to do all the time. Like, as their kids are growing from babies on, they should always be speaking life into them. And when they get up out of their house, they should still speak life to them, especially when they are living in those experiences, knowing that God has greater for their kids.
My goodness, that's a whole mouthful, and we try to hurry up and rush the kid out the house. 18, bye. Being real, you gotta go.
Right.
But sometimes they might not be ready at
Right.
18. You know, that's a scary. I don't want to say it's an exciting time,
Mhm.
but it can be scary if that particular child individual doesn't know what to do, or they've been sheltered, or they, a lot of different things. And so for your mom to do that for you, man, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
That's a blessing.
Yeah.
And I just hope any parent listening right now, be important. Anytime your child pop up on your mind, send them a text, give them a call. Or shoot, let me make it even better. The mentee, or your mentees, or your nieces or your nephews, your cousin, your baby cousin.
Call
them and give them a call. Because you just never know certain things. The God will prompt you to go do something. Hey, you need to go text that person. You need to go say this to them, and just to be like, hello, like, I'm just thinking about you. You just never know.
That can mean a difference. That can be all the difference. Yep. And so one of the things that you in your talking, it reminded me of, parents as they are doing this. And I'm gonna tell you something funny. You mentioned the scariness of that 18. In my house, we have an 1890 rule. At 18 years old, you have 90 days to be out of my house.
Oh.
And the reason behind that is because up to that point, there is a, if you will, a contract and or a plan that we should have built up to that point. So at 18, we're executing a plan. And I think sometimes we can, or as even kids, we can be put the weight of what mom and dad want us to do, right? Rather than sitting down and building a plan together that aligns with who we are. I spent 3-4 years, or 3.5 years in engineering. And for me, while I was capable of doing the work, it bored me to sin. Like it bored me that bad. Like it was just one of those things. But for me, the freedom, if you will, came in the ability to say, hey, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself going? And I think getting on that ship, so to speak, sooner, and preparing that ship for launch when the 1890 rule kicks in, it's like, boom, we already have a plan, whether it's going to be military, whether it's going to be, higher learning, whether it's going to be a vocational school. There is a plan that we've worked together as a family to say, hey, here are your options. Let's put it before you. What can we do? And I think at the same time, that financial literacy piece is vital. Like teaching your kids how to manage money early, so that when you have handed over a trust to them and say, hey, this is your trust for college, or this is your trust to open your business, because you've seen mom and dad run a business behind the scenes and you've been helping. You said, I don't want to go to college. Okay, here's the trust that we are trusting you with. You have your plan. Here it is, laid out, ready to go. How are you going to operate it? Here's your starting capital. And I think that is one of those things that we as adults now, because it wasn't taught necessarily in our churches. It wasn't taught to us to advance and be, build generational wealth. It wasn't. But now that we know about it, we have to be all that more fervent on sharing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely wasn't taught it at the schoolhouse.
No.
Yeah. And man, that's a whole different topic with the schoolhouse. We'll say that. I'll save that for a future a discussion, man. But man, you hit on some good points, man. The financial literacy, not just the spiritual, but the financial literacy, the mind, body, and soul literacy. Let's execute a plan out. And a matter of fact, I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire for this contract about responsibility, so there won't be no surprise. Like, whoa. I didn't know this, mom and dad. I didn't know you was giving me this. No, we talked about this for years, and we was planning up to this particular point. And, man, that's dope. I'm just leave it at that. That is amazing, man. If you listening, hey, a 90-day, 18 and 90-day plan. Great idea.
And so, of course, my kids are still young. I got 10 years before that is even implemented. But at the same time, it's it's a mindset of getting them prepared sooner rather than later. Like we want our kids to do better than us and our parents before us, but how can we set them up? And that's preparation. It's preparation all day.
Yep, exactly. So how did you get into motivational speaking? Where did the word amp come from?
So amped it's a spiritual energy, right? It is one of those God-given gifts that I am energized just by sharing with people, getting to know people, understanding people, meeting people where they are. And it was one of those that just growing up, my dad would tell me, son, you don't know a stranger. And for the longest time, I had no idea what that meant. So for me, it was like, okay, Dad, what do you mean? He's like, you talk to literally everybody. And how is it that we'll go into a subway and people will tell you their life story? That doesn't even make sense. But it was a spiritual gift that eventually became something that I tapped into rather than not understanding. And one of the ways that I found out what it truly meant, and it just kind of clicked. One day I was riding the metro to Roslyn, and I met a guy in Roslyn, and me just being who I am is like, how you doing? Oh, I'm just living the dream. And for him, I said, are you really living the dream, or are you just saying that? And when I
say the same thing. I say the
same thing. He stopped in his tracks. He's like, why would you even ask somebody that? I was like, but you just told me when I said, good morning, how you doing? I'm just living the dream. And so I was curious if you were actually living the dream. And we sat here, and when I tell you, there were at least 10 trains that passed by as we were having this conversation. I was late to work. He probably was as well. But it was one of those things of understanding that people will share with you when you desire to connect. And they're genuine questions. If you're just asking to be a smart aleck, people dismiss you and keep on going. But when it's a genuine question from a spiritual place, it connects with people differently. It hits differently. And so even in this moment, we found ourselves talking about his dream and where he was going and what he was trying to do and what he's trying to accomplish. I was like, well, why don't you leverage what you're doing now to get to where you're going in that? And it became well, use what you're doing. You already have a way of investing into it. How can you monetize that dream that you're trying to get to? And of course, it just kind of steamrolled for me, being amped, that energy that comes into play. And AMP are actually my initials. So that's why it's a double P in the amped, because that's who I am, and amped all the time. So amplified all the time, and just full of energy and full of just excitement. Really wanting to share with people hope by every means necessary.
Wow, that's good, man. I people be like, yeah, I'm living the dream. Really? Are you living your dream, or you living somebody else's dream? Whose dream are you living? Some of the things that we say, we live in a dream. Mm-hmm. Or my other favorite, the sky's the limit. No, the sky is not the limit. So now you're limiting the atmosphere and God in the universe. You're limiting that right now. Wait a minute, man.
Right.
So it's wording too. I think some of the words we say, we don't know what we're saying because it's just been passed down. Somebody else said it, so we just gonna do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And see, for me, there are certain words that I try not to use, like always and never. Like for me, God is the only one that can use those. He never changes, and he's always the truth. Like it's like, I'm sorry, I can't say that I'm always the truth. I can't say that I'm always right. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't say I'm never wrong. What? No, yeah. I'm wrong one time. That messes it up. But God is always the same. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And for us, it is knowing what God is capable of. God can never fail. The magnitude of never is an infinite, eternal word, but we use it. We use it so easily.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind. So I try to avoid using those words as best as I can.
Yeah. Bruh, We already look halfway in this thing. You done blessed me, man. We gotta get a collection plate for those listening. So
Look, my goal is as long as it blesses people, right? That's
yeah,
what it's about. I think that's one of the reasons why it resonates so much with me, motivational speaking, because if I could, I would do it for free all day, every day, travel the world and do it for free. But in order to build that legacy piece for my kids,
yes, sir.
I got to charge for it, right? I got to monetize it enough to where one, I can do it all day, every day, but my kids at the same time get to see, oh, dad is living the dream before us. He doesn't just say, I'm living the dream or I help others so that they can live their amped life. Why is it? Because he's living it. He is actively living what he is talking about. And that just means the world to me. So having an opportunity to be on a podcast that says, hey, we out there trying to share the good news and encourage other people, right up my alley. So again, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we highlighting the AMP, bro. We highlighting AMP, man, because we gotta highlight that and talk about this, man. This is good stuff right now, man. I see you with that Know Ya shirt on, man. And you said that you were born in New Orleans.
Yep.
And that's how you became a Saints fan because
yep.
of being born?
Yep. I was born in New Orleans in '83. And family's, of course, a big fan of the New Orleans Saints. So for me, it came correct. It came correct. It came true. Even in their bad seasons, even in their terrible seasons, I was still a fan. And so, yeah.
That's die hard. I got a confession for you, Andre.
Go for it.
I was born in Baton Rouge.
Really?
Yeah. I was born in Baton Rouge at the Old Women's Hospital.
Okay.
Wow. I moved to Kansas City in '93. So I grew up a Saints fan when I was smaller. And in my middle, and I would always want to watch the Saints in Kansas City, but they was playing the Chiefs. That's how the Chiefs became my favorite team. And I still put tabs on the Saints to find out what's going on with them. But I remember, man, that the Dome Patrol, Sam Mills, Ricky Jackson, Pat Swilly, Ron Johnson, bro. Jim Boyd was the coach, Bobby Hebert. I remember watching that, sitting down on Sundays watching them on TV.
Right, gotcha.
I remember getting the books at school, elementary school, and they had the little history of the Saints. So I learned about Tom Dempsey reading. That's how I started reading sports books. Learned about Archie Manning and the seasons that they went through at Tulane and how he went to Ole Miss and was this great quarterback, but he gets to the NFL and he's struggling,
Struggling.
The coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, Hank Stram, I think it's Hank Stram, had this play called 65 Toss Power. He won a Super Bowl IV with the Chiefs and then became the coach of the Saints with Archie Manning, and they still struggle.
Wow.
So that's my Chiefs, some of my Chiefs Saints connections. Joe Horn started with the Chiefs and then went to New Orleans and became like one of the best receivers in Saints history.
Man.
Willie Roaf was a tackle and then came to Kansas City. So just some of these stories, man, and this connection of New Orleans and Kansas City for me is just amazing. That's why I love Kansas City. We won the Super Bowl.
Right.
But when they won that Super Bowl for New Orleans in 2010,
I
was at Southern University in Baton Rouge. I'm cheering with them like, yeah.
Oh man. See, I would love to see them in another Super Bowl. There were opportunities when Breeze was around, and I feel like every year it's like, hey, can we get a quarterback that can hang out, can do something, can stay healthy on one hand, but at the same time has that view of the field. I give it to Breeze. As long as he was out there, he could see the field better than some of the quarterbacks that were in there. It was just sometimes support, sometimes bad, terrible calls, and a whole litany of other things. If you remember, I think it was it 13 or 14 when they made that example of the Saints with they were when they were betting on the
gambling,
yeah.
I know you're talking about. Yeah,
right.
I can't.
And so it was like
Bounty.
They had an opportunity, but y'all made an example of them and suspended three. Their starting line almost like starting line was benched. It was like, what is this? But all the other teams were doing the same thing. But you made an example of the Saints, who had in that season one of the more promising potential for going to the playoffs easily. And I was just like, man. And then after that, just kind of, it doesn't ever get to that pinnacle. But Breeze gave some more hope and some more light. And I thought he was going to stay at least one more season. Give it one more season when he retired. And I was like, man, because let's be honest. What's his name? Why can't I think? Buccaneers. Brady. Yeah, Brady came back twice, and he went to another team and said, "Hey, I'm gonna make them better." And it's like, okay, and he did it. But I'm like, but he went to the Saints part of the division. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be interesting. And although we beat them, right? Although we beat them, every time we played them, it was still like, okay, but you can't get further than them in the playoffs. And I just couldn't figure it out. I'm like, man, either they went to the playoffs without you, or you just couldn't. You made it to the end and you got kicked out in the first round. It's like, okay, all right.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna tell you the year that really hurt, and that the year it was 19, and y'all was in the NFC Championship game against the Rams. And so I'm like, yo, this is where my Chiefs Saints Super Bowl. We like, yo, we playing the Patriots and the Rams playing. This should be for the Saints. This should be cake. All right, now Kansas City, I don't know, because Patrick was in the first year starting. This is Brady, a little bit different. But dog, that penalty to me was part one. I can say that really hurt. Yeah, they made the field goal to at least score, and then Rams came back down, scored the field goal. Then that fumble. When Breeze fumbled that ball, I said, no, this is it. Then the era has been closed. Then the next year, they lost to the Vikings in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Next year was Brady. And Breeze couldn't get that ball down the field, man.
No.
He couldn't get it down. And Peyton was very masterful. Offensive genius, knows the strengths and weaknesses of what to do with his quarterback.
Right.
How, what to throw and what not to throw. So that hurt, man. And I think that Super Bowl was extremely boring.
Man, it was
I'm bored. I don't even watch this thing. Half Louisiana ain't watching, so why I gotta go watch? I'm mad the Chiefs lost. We got messed over off of D4 because they called an offsides penalty. Brady threw the interception. The game was over. Here come a flag. D4 offside. I said, "Oh no!" Y'all.
It was one of those things that because everybody in LA was watching that year, I'm like, no, y'all make them work for it, but don't give them an easy call to get them to the Super Bowl. Come on now, like it was and the sad part of it was they made the call, they showed it all around, and rather than reverse it or so forth, they let it play. But everybody everywhere could see that it was a terrible call. It was a terrible call. And everybody knew it. But that's what it is. That's one of the things that I can appreciate about football, but at the same time, it is one of those things that is also deafening to a team's momentum, right? You get a terrible call where it's obvious and your momentum plummets. I remember we were in the Sugar Bowl with Auburn. Virginia Tech and Auburn were in the Sugar Bowl in 05 or 06. And we had the momentum, made 2 interceptions over the game, and it was boom, had an interception, ran it back, pass interference, another 15. Like what? Like when I tell you it was one of the worst calls that I've seen in college football in a good long time, and it set them up. When momentum killed, they took it to the end zone, and the game was it. It was hard to put anything else back on the field at that point. But sports are a very emotional game, and if you take the wind out of a sail, because of a poor call. It can make all the difference.
Yeah, and people make mistakes, but that mistake was just catastrophic. This wasn't a holding. You miss a holding call. No, this was one of them. Everybody and their mama saw. And how can you recover?
Right.
I want to stay on your Saints for a moment now, because y'all just got Derek Carr.
Right.
And I've had my moments as an AFC West watching Derek Carr from afar. I'm a fan, but for some reason he has not been able to close as a with the Raiders quarterback position.
Right.
And how do you feel about, first of all, Derek Carr coming to the Saints?
Well, so I think it's going to be interesting, because let's be honest. Derek Carr was the first one in Vegas, or in Vegas history, in Oakland, that brought them back up to the playoffs after a long time, but still hasn't been able to close that gap or have a long winning season. So for me, that sends up red flags. If you can't close, why do you need to come to the Saints? But at the same time, I'm like, there's an opportunity here, especially with Winston, still injured but still returning. It's like, okay, are y'all gonna push each other to step up, or is it going to be he's coming here to die until we find another quarterback, right? We need a quarterback. We need a quarterback that's going to be consistent and not get injured. And that's one of the things that I wanted to mention about their way of protecting the quarterback now, right? The styles of the quarterbacks now has changed, but the NFL is definitely favors the quarterback as far as the protection. And I get it. But I mean, it's crazy to me, right? Like, if you got to stay in the pocket and we can't touch you, like, I'm sorry, your defense, your line needs to play better. If we can get the line so easily, it's just one of those things for me. So, but I think I think the style now is trying to get more people to stay in that pocket. But that when that pocket collapses, you also have to have some mobility. And I don't know that a lot of coaches, a lot of quarterbacks have that mobility of some of the other quarterbacks of old. And namely, I would say Vick is one that he always had mobility on his hand. If nothing was happening, he could make something happen, if you will, because he could move quickly. I think the challenge was he didn't often stay in the pocket to make sure things were collapsing before he would take off. So
I would say more like progression. He didn't go through his progression now, because Vick came out and said later on, hey, I probably could have studied my playbook a little bit more, because the brother was electric. Right. I just think had he stayed in the pocket a little bit longer and went through his progression, and then the stuff broke down. Okay, it's time to go. Right. I'm about to use my weapon now, my feet. Y'all shut everything else down. I'm gone.
and that would have been to his benefit, right? If he could have stayed in the pocket long enough to spread the field, I think he would have had a better opportunity that when people were really guarded because they weren't expecting him to run, boom, and then he could take off and make yards that made sense, versus having to slide into things and run out. Like, I get it. There aren't any quarterbacks that are about to drop the shoulder and lay somebody out and keep going. There aren't any quarterbacks that'll do that. But Vick had such electricity that had he gone through the progressions, as you mentioned, I think it would have saved him on having to use his legs as much. But then when he used them, it would have been, oh man, he used them. He's free. He's a free in open field. There goes Michael Vick. But it's just one of those things. I think now the progression has gone back to, no, we want to keep y'all as tight in the pocket as possible. And if you have to come out, be ready to slide. Like, that's ultimately what it is. It's like, okay, if you have to come out of the pocket, be ready to slide. Make a move if you come out, or slide.
So because I was thinking about with the black quarterbacks, we're going to be talking about the style of the quarterback play in general. Now you have a lot of running quarterbacks. You got Jalen Hurts. You have Lamar Jackson. We can even say Patrick Mahomes, but his style is him and Burrow. Burrow's more like a pro, like a Brady type.
Mm-hmm.
And Mahomes, when it breaks down, he runs second. He uses those legs to get those yards and slide because he used to play baseball.
Mm-hmm.
But do you feel like with like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, who just was drafted by the Colts, do you feel like there's a shift, possibly even Jalen Hurts? Do you feel like it's going to be a shift of the position of the quarterback position and how it's being played, where you're going to get more running quarterbacks, or do you think we're going to keep like at a Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers type style of quarterbacks?
So I think from my standpoint, I think there are going to be more running quarterbacks in the sense of they're going to have to move, because let's be honest, a lot of these offensive lines are breaking down so quickly. If you don't have enough time to move and really get to where somebody's open, you got to move out of the pocket. You got to run. And so being quick to be able to move, I think the ability to move is going to be more commonplace, right? Versus somebody who has to stay in the pocket, the entire time to really execute. And I think that is going to be the more likely that a quarterback is going to have just as much legs as, say, a running back. but they also are going to have that ability to work in that pocket and explode when need be, and get those yards when necessary. But I think the abilities of the quarterbacks is going to shift. I don't know that because of all of the press on concussions and the danger of the sport and all these other pieces about protecting the quarterback and, fines and all these penalties and things of that nature that are circled around the quarterback. It says that, hey, we are trying to ultimately make you stay in the pocket.
Mm.
And that's because of what the press says. Press is like, oh, well, concussions adding up to mental health, they're not lasting as long. The bodies are breaking down. Okay. But then if you tell them that they have to stay in the pocket, what happens to those people who are used to running and executing while running? You have made it almost impossible for them to get out of the pocket and do something because you put all these other stipulations around all the other players. They're like, oh, well, we can't hit him. So unless he's in open field. Okay, well, now we got to do something. So I think they're going to have the ability to run. Will the league push more on the opportunity to run, or are they going to stick to this chasm of we want them to be more professional and stay in the pocket, if you will?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of potential here, but I think it also depends on the lines as well. If you are paying all this money for lines to hold up, they got to hold up to at least give people 5 or 6 seconds, right? Give me a few seconds to look at it and then be able to execute. Versus everybody in themselves, it's like, okay. I realize from playing football, it is a very fast-paced sport, and so as soon as you come off of that line, you're trying to get through that line as quickly as possible to get to the quarterback without getting a penalty or without getting a fine or some sort. And at the level of NFL, this is what the 1% of all college players. The 0.5% of all college players that made it to the draft. It's like, okay, all right, and they're at the top of their game, being professionally trained to execute. Mm-hmm. It's just a different level. It's just a different level.
Yes, indeed. Boy, you got great analysis, man, on quarterbacking, man. You saw Vick at Virginia Tech. You done helped me out a little bit more to understand it a little bit better. My thing is on Lamar Jackson and Josh, because Josh Allen's very mobile. Mm-hmm. If I'm the owner, I want to see you throw the football down the field. Right. I don't want you to run when you have to, mm-hmm. but I don't want you to have more running yards than my running back in the backfield than I can right now.
Basically.
That's it. That's it. Hey, get the ball down. I mean, Lamar, you got this money. I need you to hit Odell Beckham. You said you ain't got weapons now. Okay, we got your weapon right here.
Right. But I think at the same time, when it comes to the weapons, we get so many teams get, one or two, or they'll trade for a bigger name from somebody else. I'm like, okay, but everybody knows as soon as he gets in, that's who we're looking for. Right. You say, oh, Odell Beckham is right over there. Let's man him up. Leave somebody else open. We'll cover that somehow. But we need doubles on him. Don't let him get nothing. And then he's complaining because he ain't ever getting the ball because he ain't ever open.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it becomes a catch-22. It's like, this is why building out a core of people that can be built up together. And I realize there are going to be some exceptional wide receivers that people are going to trade for wide receivers. And it makes sense. Hey, you want to go to a team where, one, you probably don't get a ring. You will definitely make it to the postseason to get some extra bonus money on that, right? Because you want to go to the postseason every season and you want to get to Pro Bowls. Yeah. Those three things right there, you want to try and do on whatever team that you're on. And so they are trying to get that best opportunity. And sadly, it puts a target on you when you go to a team where it's like, okay, we know exactly what you're trying to do, and we're going to put somebody on you that can either keep up with you or put somebody else to support them to keep up with you. So they won't throw you the ball. That's it. Yeah, so I love the game. I love the game. I haven't played it in a long time, but I love the game. It's a lot of fun, and it's good to watch.
Oh yeah. Still is great to watch. I'm gonna get you out of here on this note, man. This has been fun. I'm looking forward to the next time we get together and chop it up again. But I want to get you on these two things. Number one, NBA playoffs. Who's coming out the East and who's coming out the West? Who's winning it?
So I want to say I would like to see Kobe win. Not Kobe. LeBron pull off it this year. I need him to pull off one more ring before his son comes up. For me, that's what it is. I need you to have one more ring, and let's be honest, he has done a number of things with a number of different teams. He has marketed himself very well. He loves the game. But at this point, he is staying until his son gets up here.
Yeah.
And so once his son gets up here, he plays, 1-2 years with him. He's gonna wash his hands and leave it to the next generation. And so I want him to at least win one more ring before he goes out. I've been seeing a lot of things in regards to people trying to compare him to Mike and some of the other greats and things of that nature. And I'm like, look, everybody plays in different areas, different arenas, and different times. The people in themselves are different. They're training different. They are significantly bigger, in many cases, and they're all 6+. Like, it blows my mind when I see a team of basketball players where the shortest one is 6'5". What?
Yeah. Everybody giants.
Right.
Okay.
And on top of that, they're training differently, and so everybody's. Even like football, basketball, once you get to the NBA, you are the creme de la creme of basketball players in the world.
If you riding the bench, you still creme de la creme.
Right.
And you get on the bench. If you the water boy or the water girl, you the best of it.
I'm telling you, you're getting a nice paycheck.
Hello.
So you get to that level and do it well and do it right. So I think the Lakers are going to pull it off. And on the other side, let's see. Are the Nuggets still in? Is it the Nuggets?
The Nuggets in the Western Conference with the Lakers. So the Eastern Conference, we got Boston, Philadelphia, Miami, and New York.
Philly might do something. Philly has looked decent all season. So for them not to do something, I think a lot of people will be disappointed. a lot of people would be disappointed.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they do something so that, hey, and just call it done. But I still think the Lakers are gonna pull it off at the end.
Okay.
They weren't expected to make it this far or to win it out,
Yeah.
but I think they have one of the best chances to make it out.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Ending on this note, what's one message that you have for the audience who's listening today? What's one thing that you want to leave them with?
I would say do what you love. And it's one of those things that if you are doing what you love, it never really feels like work. You could be working long, lengthy hours, but if you're doing what you love, there is an enjoyment and a fulfillment that you will find that living somebody else's dream will never give you. And just being able to understand that it's not a absolute that you are living your dream, but you can't help with somebody else's, right? Until you can get it to a point where you can fully live your dream. Um, I would say do as much as you can to get to that point. And if you don't feel like I want to put that much effort into doing your dream all day, every day, then hey, that's your choice. But for me, I always tell people to always live an amp life, and that's surrounded about around John 10 and 10. That Christ came that we might have life and that more abundantly. It's in that second part of it. And as part of it, if we put an amp up to your life and everybody could hear and see what is going on, are you in the place where you want everybody to see it? What they're hearing, is it what you want them to hear, or is it complaints? Is it destruction? Is it all these things that are tearing down people? Or do you want them to see you, hey, I've lived a life that I am I'm content with it. I'm content with it. I'm loving what I'm doing. My family is thriving. And that doesn't mean that you have to be a millionaire in order for that to be what it is. And so as I continue on to pass this, do what you love and live in an amp life. I just want people to understand that your life was never meant to be mediocre.
Say less. Where can we, Andre, where can the people who are listening find you at on social media?
So That Guy Amped on all social media platforms. If you are interested in me speaking our coaching opportunities, you can go to ampedspeaks.com, AMPPED.com, speaks.com, and find me there. We'll have a conversation and really get to see what your teams might look like, what your teams want to do. And then also we are building a creative agency called Amped Up Studios. And so for us, it's a matter of busting out into the luxury hotel tourism scene. But we just love sharing what people are doing and what's out there in the world. So find us on Instagram, Amped Up Studios. Find me on Instagram and every other platform at That Guy Amp. And all of them are connected and all that good stuff.
That's awesome. Andre, my brother, my friend. So I feel like I've known you for like years, but thank you for coming on this episode of Casual Highlights to discuss for this high depth discussion. We definitely gonna do it again. Definitely gotta talk more sports. Gotta talk about your creative studio next time, man. Thank you for coming, sir.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate you.
And everybody, till next time, check this episode out and all the other shows. We're part of the BS3 network, changing the way you watch TV. So you can listen to this show as well as other shows at bs3network.com. Check us out on all social media. And my name is Al Hygh. You can check my social media out, Instagram, Al Highlights, and Casual Highlights for all sports and pictures that I take and do. Until next time, God is love and disrespect your senses.